other thing I want to get into on Afghanistan is this article by Matt Boot in the Washington Post, where he says the title here is "Who's to blame for the deaths of 13 service members in Kabul? We all are." This is some pretty severe projection on the part of Matt Boot. He is, if really anybody in the U.S. To point to, Matt Boot is certainly very high on the list of reasons that these soldiers, young men and women, probably a half or a third of Matt Boot's age, who were taken out by this Islamic State suicide bombing. So, a couple things that Matt says in this article is Biden, Trump, and the American people are responsible. The fuse, he says, the fuse was lit 18 months ago when Trump signed the Doha Accord. This is absolutely untrue. The fuse was lit when the U.S. entered Afghanistan, decided to occupy that country and stay. That's why we've seen drone strike after drone strike going, or not drone, bomb after bomb going off, targeting people in Afghanistan who were either Americans or American allies this whole time. And while for a good part of the war it was the Taliban, the U.S. actually ends up backing the Taliban by the end of this thing against the Islamic State group that carries out this attack. And so this is just a complete rewriting of history by Matt Boot. And again, he's the person that lit this fuse, not the American people for wanting to end this war. I guess one thing to point out is that had Biden stuck to the initial drawdown agreement and gotten troops out by May 1st of 2021, so a few months ago. And this Scott Horn makes this point so perfectly on Kennedy, his second appearance in a couple weeks. He did an absolutely great job by saying, had Biden stuck with that May 1st agreement, the Taliban would not have been anywhere as far ahead in their offensive as they were on, when the U.S. troops were at the Kabul airport. And so while you may have always had like an ugly situation at the Kabul airport, it very well may have been that there weren't U.S. soldiers there when the Taliban were taking over Kabul. And so, again, had it, the people who pushed Biden to stay, according to the original agreement signed by Trump, are certainly not the people that are responsible for this. Boot blames the collapse of the Afghan National Army on the fact that there was no maintenance of the aircraft. This is one of the most laughable points that he makes, to say that because the people of America wanted to end the war, and for that reason we pulled our contractors out of Afghanistan, and then the Afghan army had no air force, and that's why all this happened, is a complete mistelling of history. They had 20 years to train the Afghan National Army to maintain their own air force, and were unable to do it because what was prioritized was weapon sales and just straight up corruption, right? Having contractors provide this maintenance on the planes rather than train the Afghans to do it ensures that American companies get billion-dollar contracts to deploy people overseas to do it. As soon as the Afghans were almost able to repair their own helicopters, of course, they were the old helicopters made by Russia. The U.S. had started to sanction Russia. And so we sold them a bunch of Black Hawks helicopters that they had no ability to maintain. And so the failure to maintain the Afghan National Army and blaming down the American people is a laughable joke from Boot. And, it shouldn't really be able to be written in the pages of the Washington Post, just because it's obvious that these failures are because of the corruption and the military-industrial complex. He kind of tries to blame the Taliban for the Islamic State attack, even suggesting that it was maybe because of the Islamic Jihad, that they wouldn't want to prevent the Islamic State from being able to blow up U.S. soldiers. There's absolutely no evidence for this at all. And in fact, if anything, it's just like some mild racism from Matt Boot that, he's just able to assert, well, they're all Muslims and they all hate Americans, so I'm sure they're on the same side as this, and completely completely ignores the fact that the U.S. and the Taliban have figured this out and we're all on board with it. The U.S. has been supporting the Taliban in their operations against the Islamic State in Afghanistan with drone strikes. And so there's just no way to assert that because they're all Muslims, they're going to hate Americans together when, in reality, that they've fought against each other and understandably on the side of the Americans from the Taliban perspective. So then he says at the end something I guess kind of correct, although kind of obvious, just that the options were to either stay forever or to leave. But Matt Boot would prefer to stay forever. That, he's written articles with this prescription laid out. He wants to fight this thing like the initial, U.S. war against the Native Americans. He wants to commit a genocide. He wants to, essentially say that anybody in Afghanistan who doesn't want to live how Matt Boot lives will be eliminated by the American government, and we're going to try to craft a society there no matter how many people we have to kill. This is the insanity of Matt Boot and the kinds of things that he's advocating and what he wants for Afghanistan. He says the leaders gave the American people what they wanted, and basically saying that, Biden should have ignored the will of the American people, not, and stayed in Afghanistan when obviously we needed to leave. So that's the Boot article from the Washington Post. I just wanted to get into that because it's the height of unfairness. It makes me so mad that the people who lied us into these wars, the people who started these wars, who the whole time continued to lie to the American people so our government could continue to corruptly take all of our tax dollars, all of our hard work, and funnel it to their friends in the military industrial complex, the people in think tanks like Matt Boot, and also just to give these people insane amounts of power over the entire world. They're reshaping Central Asia. They're reshaping the entire Middle East. They're reshaping huge chunks of Africa, Libya, Somalia, the Sahel region. They think they're gods, and they need to be brought down, and we cannot listen to these people anymore. They're dangerous. They're going to bankrupt us. They're going to kill a lot of people, and overall just make the whole world less safe for us. And so we have to continue to take on these thoughts, especially when they're given these mainstream major platforms, and tell outright lies and try to blame the American people for the Afghan war. That again, he's one of the people responsible for making the American people so afraid that they're willing to go into all these stupid conflicts. Essentially, really help Osama bin Laden play out his grand strategy is what Matt Boot has done for the past 20 years.